How you doing, guys? It's Warlock here. So, someone posted a Diablo 2 Resurrected survey a while back, and I thought it would be nice to discuss the questions and changes proposed, as well as the survey results, and try to figure out what would and what wouldn't work in a game like Diablo 2. You can still take the survey if you want, even though the results are out. And if you want to do that without being influenced by any opinions stated here or the survey results, there's a link to the survey in the description, so you can go ahead and do that now. So, first question. Should the stash space be increased? There's multiple options here, multiple 10x10 square stash tabs, unlimited stash space, just one stash tab of 10x10, no, or I am not sure. Most people opted for the multiple tabs of 10x10, and a lot of other people also opted for unlimited stash space. And having unlimited stash space actually makes it easy to spot why having too much space in general would be a bad idea. Because if you have too much space, the temptation will be to just cram your stash full of junk and stuff that you're never going to use. Or stuff like uniques that aren't even useful for your character, but you're like, you know, you're hoarding it for a rainy day. Who knows, maybe one day you're going to start a paladin and you're going to use the shield that you got or whatever. Personally, I think it can be harmful to have too much space. Ironically enough, the people who need the most amount of space are newbies. People who aren't that experienced with the game, they don't know most of the items, they don't know how all the systems work, so they just pick something up, they don't know if it's good or not immediately, so they're just gonna want, their first instinct is going to be to hoard it. But the more advanced you are, the more game knowledge you have, and you know all the items, and you know what's good and what's not good. You don't need that much space. You know what to prioritize, and you know what's worth a slot in your inventory and in your stash. So in a weird way, you should have multiple stash tabs when you start the game, yet have one removed, maybe like when you reach level 99 or when you unlock nightmare difficulty or something like that, which is stupid and doesn't make sense. But I would be okay with multiple tabs of stash space, or just one. I like this option too, but I think unlimited stash space is very bad for the game. Number 2, should there be a separate inventory space for charms? This is a bit controversial, I feel. A lot of people want a charm inventory. A lot of people want a dedicated space for charms where you can only put charms, and that has nothing to do with your regular inventory. It's 58%. Surprisingly, 30%, which is not a small number, just flat out say no. It's like, no, don't change it. And this is an interesting option. Charms should work in both the charm and normal inventory. The problem with charms is that they're very boring. The mechanic itself. If you think about it, the reason why charms were added to the game was that so you have another use for your inventory. It was designed to force a choice between having a small passive buff or having more space in your inventory. And it's a valid choice. It's basically the minigame. That's the minigame. What's more important to you currently, in your current stage of your journey? Is it having more space in your inventory so you can hoard more stuff? Or would you rather have a small buff, like maybe 5% fire resistance or whatever? That's it. So having a dedicated charm inventory, first of all, it kills that minigame. It removes that decision from you. But also, like, the problem with that is that it's just boring. It doesn't really add much to the game, in my opinion. It's kind of like having a row of passive skills in every other Diablo clone out there. It's just, passives can be the most boring thing about the game if they're not implemented well. And I think there are enough items in the game that you have to pick up and analyze without having to have charms in the game just to add to that. So I'm kind of fine with not changing things much. In all honesty, if you're level 99, you probably don't need much inventory space. There's not much that you're looking for except better versions of the gear that you already have. You're looking for very specific things that you're going to equip immediately, you know, as soon as you find them. That said, if you are level 99 and you are looking to hoard stuff, number 1, there is the cube, so I guess in that sense they could add a auto load cube option so that when you pick something up and your inventory is full, it just goes into your cube automatically without you having to open your inventory and placing it manually in the queue, because that's tedious. The other thing they could do, but this is a kind of drastic change that would take a lot of time to implement and balance and test out, would be to make it so the charms are not as powerful, or even more to the point, limit the effective usefulness of charms in some way. So you could have like either caps on the bonuses they provide, like no more than 10% resistance or no more than this amount of that stat, or just limit the amount of affixes and stats that charms can roll with. So they're mostly like small bonuses, but they're not, and they're not significant enough for you to want to fill your entire inventory with them, because it's pointless. Overall, I don't like the charm inventory. I don't think it adds much to the game. Moving on. Should inventory space be increased? So most people chose this first option here. Yes, but only in combination with a separate charm inventory where charms work in that charm inventory. So basically what this tells me is that the main problem with the inventory space is not that it's not big enough, it's just the charms themselves. Which makes me wonder if just taking charms out of the game, if that would improve the game more than anything else. I don't know. I think a more conservative method where you just limit the effectiveness of charms, or at least have an auto include into cube option when you pick them up, that would be enough. At least for starters. I wouldn't worry too much about this and about your overall inventory space. It's big enough. Like making it even bigger would make it kind of unrealistic. Item changes. Should runes and gems be stackable up to, for example, up to 10 per stack? So you could take like one gem and put it on top of another gem, and you have two occupying the same slot. Again, more inventory management. 78%. A whopping 78%. Almost all people replied with yes. 16% no, and 6% I'm not sure. What is my view on this? Well, I'm not a fan. I think, as with a lot of the other items that you pick up, this should be a choice. Like when you have limited space in your inventory, this goes back to why I don't want infinite stash tabs. When you have limited space in your inventory, you have to make a choice at any point in time. If you pick up, let's say your stash is full and you pick up a new gem or a rune, you instantly have to think if that rune is worth keeping at the expense of something else in your stash, or perhaps another rune, or if not, then maybe you should just sell it or trade it with someone else, or even use it immediately. Like I feel like one of the problems with the way things are now, or the way a lot of players, including myself, tend to play the game right now, is that the hoarding instinct is too strong. You're tempted to hoard everything that you get and not use it immediately. Whereas as soon as you start actually looking for socketed items and putting your gems into those items early on, you have a much better experience. So I like that choice of having to prioritize which gems you keep and which runes you keep and which you don't, and what you do with the rest. Number 5, should quivers have unlimited ammo? Gods, no. Please no. This is my personal opinion, that would be stupid. 50%, wasn't expecting that. 50% are for it. 38% against it, not an insignificant number. I don't, like, why would you even have quivers then, if you have unlimited ammo? It's just, in my opinion, kind of dumb. Yes, you could argue that it's just a pointless chore or mini game to have to mind how many arrows you have, but first of all, in real life, that's exactly what you would have to do. Second of all, you have like 350 arrows in a quiver, so it's not a small amount. And third of all, it's just an extra resource that you have to manage, just like mana and health. That's always been how I saw this, and why I felt the Amazon class, for instance, was so interesting, because they're very complex in this sense. They have to manage not just physical attacks and stats and melee and all that, they also do ranged, and they also do heavy magic. They have a bit of everything, which makes them a very dynamic class and a very complex one. And I think it's only fair that you should mind the number of arrows that you have, or bolts, or whatever, at any point in time. It's just another resource that you need to manage correctly. If you have access to everything, because generally characters are either more magic based or more physical based, but Amazons kind of have a bit of everything. So this is just a penalty. Realistically, not that much of a penalty, but still something that you have to keep in mind. And again, I don't see the point of having quivers but not having an arrow count, because if you do that, then you have to go full Diablo 3 and put quivers that are essentially just like, they operate like a shield, which you just equip them for whatever properties they have. And I think quivers should just be quivers. I don't think there should be a magic item balance. Should there be minor spell balancing to make useless or bad spells more viable? 70% say yes, 19% say no. I'm totally for this. I don't see much of a problem with some minor balance tweaks. There are a lot of spells that I personally feel are useless and that could have a particular use, like Firebolt, for instance. Firebolt is good early on, but that's about it. It has a very low mana cost that doesn't scale. But if you compare Firebolt to Fireball, I'm always a proponent of, for instance, if you have AoE, it should deal less damage than non-AoE. So if you put all your points in Firebolt, and if you put all the synergies, it would be interesting to have Firebolt out-damage Fireball by a lot, because that would give the spell a potential use as like a boss killer or something like that. Number 7, should there be some minor mercenary balancing to make useless or bad mercenaries more viable? Yes, resounding yes from everyone. Again, it always seems to be 19%. It's the same people. Change the game and die is what they say. I would agree with the blue portion with the yes people, but there's a caveat, because I don't think this would be minor balancing. I think mercenaries kind of have to be rethought a bit, because Act 2 mercenaries are just that good, because auras are just that good. And honestly, it's not just the auras, it's their main attack, their jab, which is like incredibly fast and very useful and deals a lot of damage. And they're pretty tanky, so it pretty much makes every other mercenary useless, except perhaps the rogue in some niche cases. One interesting way to go about it would be to give all of them auras. Act 3 mercenaries, Act 5, Act 1, whatever. I'm okay with rebalancing the mercenaries, whatever form that takes. Because some people genuinely need elemental damage, so it would make sense for them to go for Act 3. However, they still don't go for Act 3 mercenaries because auras are so good. Number 8, should there be some minor item and rune word balancing to make useless/bad items and rune words more viable? 64% say yes. No, 25%. These are getting bigger. This number's getting bigger. A lot of people are unsure about this. What's my view on this? I think a change is warranted. Now, what form that change should take is up for discussion. There are sets, like starter beginner sets in the game, that don't make sense. They're just not worth it. At no point in time are they useful for you, and that's because they're just not powerful enough to warrant getting them. And then there's sets that are powerful enough, but you never find them fast enough. Like, by the time you get a starter set, your character has already outgrown that set to the point where it's not worth equipping. So they're essentially junk items. Now, you could rebalance them. Another option would be to just remove them from the game, and I would be for that as well. I think there are enough sets and interesting items in the game such that you don't need these starter sets. And I think that making them more readily available, like having a higher drop rate for something like Cleglaws or whatever, like the worst, most newbie sets in the game, I don't think that helps either, because it takes away from the achievement of getting a good item. If you get green items willy-nilly right off the bat at the start of the game, I think that just detracts from the whole experience and makes item hunting less relevant as a whole. So I'd be totally okay with removing some faulty sets. Rune words, same thing. Battle.net changes. Number 9. Should the 6 months ladder season cycle be changed? Ooh, people are very split on this one. 34% say yes, make it shorter. 31% no. 28% I'm not sure. A lot of people aren't sure. And 7% say yes, make it longer. Like 9 months. What's my opinion on this? I'm indifferent. Honestly, I haven't played ladder enough for this to even be something that I think about, and I think it's just not something that I'm interested in general. So yeah, just keep it the same, make it longer, make it shorter, doesn't matter to me. The shorter you make it, the less time you have to get to a higher level and get everything that you want, but that could be interesting, especially for the speedrunners. But yeah, I don't much care about this. Number 10, should the non-ladder rune word drop restrictions be removed? Yes. 54% no, 24% I'm not sure, 22%. I would say yes. I don't like the idea of exclusivity within the game. It always makes you feel bad when you're playing single player, because there are people, believe it or not, that play single player, and then you find out that you're essentially being punished for it. I've had times when I would farm for particular rune words and then input them in this pre-socketed item that I busted my ass to find, and just discover that it doesn't doesn't work because the rune word that I've been looking at was ladder only and I didn't read. It feels bad and it makes you feel stupid for not playing ladder, right? Because that's the full experience. And whenever you have one game mode that trumps all other game modes, that's the one full experience, and all the other, it makes all the other game modes seem dumb and makes you seem dumb for playing them. So I would remove the restriction because of that. Agree with the majority for once. Should the player's X command to increase XP drops also be available on BattleNet? This is a tough one. 44% say yes, 30% say no. Very much split. There are pros and cons to both. Ultimately, I would side against it. If you do this, then you might as well just build it into the game. Not even make it an option. Make this the new difficulty of the game. Something like Player 7 or whatever, because that's what most of the player base will be playing. And the reason I'm against that is because of that, like, because it's just a hardcore rebalancing. Diablo 2's progression and difficulty curve is the best one that I've encountered in any game, and I think you can make a potent argument for preserving that. It's the way the game was meant to be played, and the other reason why I'm not okay with this is because it comes very close to the idea of power leveling, which I absolutely hate. Like, I hate logging into something like Diablo 3 and just talking to a friend and then just sitting into a corner while they level you to max level. I think that completely ruins the point of the game. And the point of the game is progression. I like the idea of having a level playing field for everyone, where you can't tweak stuff to, tweak item drops or progress faster or slower than anyone else. It should be a level playing field for anyone. So I would say no on this one. Tooltips. Should there be an optimal modernized spell hotkey system? I assume by this they mean something like Diablo 3, where you have hotkeys for all your skills instead of just having left click and right click and having to select on the fly or cycle through skills to use. 62% say yes, 26% say no. I would be okay with it. I don't see much of a con. If I'm being honest, if they made, or even if I wanted to make one of these games, I would probably go for that. It seems unnecessarily clunky to limit yourself to 2 skills to use at any one time. So I would totally be okay with having 4 or 6 bindable hotkeys that you can use in addition to left and right click, which is something you do anyway. Like, I bind all my spells to ASD, FG, H, etc. So it's kind of the same thing, it's just that you have to do an extra click. It would be much faster and much smoother if pressing D was Frost Nova instead of pressing D and then right clicking. So yeah, totally for this. Number 13, should there be an in-game rune word or horadric cube encyclopedia? I'm gonna fly through this one. I'm gonna say yes. Normally I would say no. If it were a new game, I would definitely say no. I think there is something to be said about discovering recipes along with the rest of the community and going online and checking forums and double checking information. But when you're talking about a 20-year-old game like this where everyone already knows everything, it's just, you know all this stuff and it's readily available for everyone, so it's just tedious to have to alt tab. So yes, have an encyclopedia. Should there be an optional loot filter to make certain item drops, e.g. runes more visible? Not sure I understand this one. So if you're talking about a cycle option to cycle through types of loot, yes, that would be good. For instance, to eliminate quivers. That's always annoying when you have the ground cluttered with useless junk that you don't want to see and you can't see the items that you want to pick up because of it, because it's just full of bolts and quivers. I'm totally for that. If you're talking about color coding, they're already color coded. Runes are a different color than everything else. 70% yes, resounding yes. There's always the naysayers though. Number 15, should there be a kill tracker where you see how often you killed boss X and get stats of the drops? 52% say yes, 30% say no. I'm indifferent. For me, it doesn't really add anything. It's kind of like, it's that, how about that category, where you just you look at that and you tell people that you killed Bale 432 times and people just go, how about that? And then they go about their day because they don't care. And I don't care. So if anything, it makes you more depressed when you see huge numbers of times that you've killed a monster. It just makes you depressed about your life, knowing that you're grinding indefinitely, something like that. Number 16, should there be an option to toggle showing ground loot so you don't have to keep alt pressed every time you want to see the loot? I mean, this is optional. Everything that is optional should be okay by default, right? It's just extra options for you to tailor the gameplay to your liking. 76% are for this. overwhelming majority. What do I think? I would personally not use something like that. If it's optional, sure, but everything that, even if it's optional, is just, it's still time that has to go into coding that thing in, so if I don't see the point to it, I would still vote no. And I don't like, especially in something like Diablo 2, where you don't have symbols for items, like in more modern games, I think it would just be constantly cluttered. You know, the ground would be, you wouldn't even have where to click to move your character sometimes because of all the loot showing up. So I very much prefer the Alt key. Actually, I bound it to Control instead of Alt. But you know, to each his own. Should there be an optional additional tooltip on items that shows the possible min-max rolls of the stats? E.g. Noggle Ring plus 21% magic find with the possible rolls between 15 and 30%. Again, most people want this. I don't see any period during your progression where this would matter. If you're early on in your progression and you're a newbie, then you don't care because you found a Noggle Ring, and you're probably going to wear it, or at least hoard it, because it's valuable to you. And if you're an advanced player, then you know the range anyway. And I feel like the range, the rolls on items aren't as important, thank God, as in other games, so it wouldn't matter that much. I wouldn't bother much with this one, but again, it's optional. Alright, content changes. This is where things can get a little dangerous. Should they add at some point more endgame content like the Pandemonium event? 69% say yes, 14% no, 17% I'm not sure. My first instinct is to say yes, but then I also fear what could happen given enough time, because when you start adding content that wasn't there to begin with, you can get to that point where it just, you no longer recognize the game. I think the ultimate nightmare would be to add something that's analogous to rifts in Diablo 3, which would, in my opinion, totally water down and ruin the game. There's already enough stuff to do in terms of endgame content. That's one of the strong points of Diablo 2, because you can grind to level 99, or you can do PvP, or you can, you know, do Baal runs, or Pandemonium, or whatever. At the same time, if the event itself is solid and doesn't detract from all the other things that you can already do in the game, like Greater Rifts, which would be like, again, the definitive way to play the game is this, and everything else that you're doing just make you seem like a doofus, then it's fine. I'm still tempted to say no here. At least not yet. Should they add at some point new items, rune words, or horadric cube recipes? Same problem. The more stuff you add, the more you risk power creep getting in. The more you... And of course there's also a design question, like if they're just designed differently or have different design philosophies behind them, you'll feel that, and that might invalidate some of the older recipes and items. So I would take a more conservative approach for now with this. I think there are enough recipes that have been added over the years to keep people invested. This would be more for hardcore players that have played it for 20 years and are bored of everything, but just having the remaster itself would sort of revitalize their interest for quite a while, I think. Other changes: should there be an optional personal loot option in multiplayer, as in everyone gets his own... Oh, yeah, okay. So, instance loot that you cannot steal, which is something David Brevik, one of the creators of Diablo 2, was also mulling over at one time. If he could go back and add this to the game, would he or would he not? People are very much split on this, more so than on everything else, every other issue. 36% say yes, 39% say no. This would be, I think this is the first time where the people that say no outrank the people that say yes. There's another option, yes, but only if there is a trade-off, e.g. less drops or minus 100% to magic find if active. Interesting. I've actually thought of a different option where you could combine the two types of loot, where you have mostly instanced loot, as in loot that only you can see and pick up, but some of it is common and that everyone can see. And the instanced loot would be tailored to your character, and but the problem with that is that it's not that kind of game. Diablo 2 is and always has been, a wholly social experience with free trading and all that, which you wouldn't really see get made today. I think the main fear that motivates people to ask for such a change would be thieves, people who just steal everything and then don't share with others. And honestly, the problem there is, why are they even in your party? I think you're playing with the wrong crowd if that happens. Generally, I feel like if you play with the right people, then you can enjoy and rejoice when you get a good loot drop. And if I find something like a good sword and I'm playing sorceress, then I'm for sure not going to keep that for myself because I have no use for it. So I'm going to give to the paladin in my party, or barbarian, or whatever. So I think the problem stems from that more so than a fault with the game itself. And I think instanced loot would just make everyone feel a bit more isolated, where you just say, oh look, a legendary dropped, and the other people are like, what are you talking about? I didn't see anything. It just makes them feel bad that they're not experiencing what you're experiencing, and vice versa. Number 21, should there be an additional or easier way to respec? God, this more than anything else I am against. And I'm not alone in this, because I know for a fact that the creators of D2 are also against respecing, and it seems like the majority is also in favor of it. But again, very much split down the middle. 44% against, 43% for, and a big portion that aren't sure. I'm totally fine with respecs being in the game, but in a limited capacity. Like the 3 respecs that you already have, I think that's enough. That's way more than enough. I'm a fan of just having one option to respec, honestly, and having it be very costly and hard to get to. I think that would be even better. There should be a big cost associated with it. And the main argument I have against it is that it takes away from the journey. A game like this is all about the journey and not about the end point. Because what happens when you have easy respec, or you have like one of those wardrobes where you can just change builds on the fly with a max level character, you just play for like 15 minutes. Like think of it, if you have level 99 sorceress, for instance, and you're running a cold build, you log into the game because you want to play a bit, you play that for like 30 minutes, and then you log out of the game and you log into this other sorceress who is a fire build, has a fire build. You play that for half an hour, and then after both of those sessions, you're like, that was cute, and then you log out. It's exactly the kind of experience you would have if you had easy respec. It's not the kind of game, it's not like an action adventure game where combat is the main focus, or playing with a decked out character like Dante in Devil May Cry who has all his weapons and whatnot. It's not about stylish combat, it's about the progression. And I like the idea of having characters that are unique, where you can compare skills and builds, like you get to these freaky builds that no one else has in this. That's partly the point of the loot system as it exists as well, because it means that my character is unique and distinct from every other character in the game. And it goes back to the question of difficulty. This is one of the things that adds difficulty and adds choice to the game. It makes you think about every skill point and where you invest it. And if you take that away from the player, it just becomes a more boring game as a result. Should you be able to open the cow level after killing the Cow King? 82% move, yeah. I don't know, I haven't played the cow level enough to care about this. Sure. Whatever. Should the Neelathok portal stay open after completing the quest and getting the waypoint? Yes. 65%, 22% I'm not sure. Rightly so, because this is like a weird question. And 13% no. No. I'm gonna go with the naysayers on this one. Like, why would you keep it open? It just seems like Anya forgot to close the door to the bathroom or something. I don't know, it's just like, it does nothing except distract you from the view in Horadric. Like, you have the waypoint, you can revisit the levels. Maybe it's for the monster, I forget the name. There's a unique monster right at the entrance to Neelathok's den. I'm more of a fan of just adding a separate waypoint at the start of it, or replacing the portal with a waypoint. I don't like leaving portals open. I actually go out of my way of avoiding the portal shrines, because those portals, unlike every other portal in the game, they never close. And I just hate that. I hate going to town and having 2 town portals open and then forgetting which one I came from and accidentally going back to the portal shrine. And that's it. Some very interesting changes and thoughts proposed. I think most people will always go with the yes option, especially when it comes to adding things to the game, because that's always going to be your first instinct as a gamer. But the problem with that is, especially for a game like this, it can take away a lot of the point and the gameplay and the decision making behind it. That's it for the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to take the survey. Again, it's linked in the description. And I'll see y'all later.